As a platform fighter instead of a traditional fighter, Smash Ultimate and the Smash Bros. Franchise as a whole has a different win condition that effectively influences almost every aspect of its gameplay. Rather than depleting your opponent's health bar, victory or defeat is determined via ring out, being thrown off stage far enough to where you hit the blast zone and are forcibly killed, quote unquote, or don't have the means to return back to stage. Dating all the way back to Smash on N64, the concept of recovery has been a heavy target of debate, especially in the competitive scene. Often, when someone evaluates a character, their ability to recover is called into question, and in a lot of cases, they're compared to other recoveries as a point of reference. Anyone with aspirations of competing in tournaments would consider this of paramount importance. For today though, I'm playing devil's advocate and making the suggestion that recovery may not be as essential to a fighter's success as everyone claims it to be. Of course, as you know though, it's always better to prevent being thrown off stage and having to recover in the first place, and the same applies to real life. So to help you out with keeping control over your computer, here's today's sponsor, NordVPN. As I'm sure many of you know by now, NordVPN is a virtual private network that allows you to mask your IP address whenever online using proxies, which can protect you against DDoS attacks, tracking, or the like. Also, if by chance you live in a country that restricts access to content like movies and games, you can change your virtual location to somewhere that isn't restricted to circumvent that. Nord also contains built-in threat protection that blocks malware, dangerous files, websites, malicious ads, and trackers with just one click, so you can be anonymous and safe while browsing. If you're still not using a VPN yet, then check out Nord using my link nordvpn.com/vars3, that's 3 eyes, and you get a big discount off the 2-year plan and 4 extra months for free. They have a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee, so if you don't think you're getting your money's worth, then a free refund is waiting for you. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's get back into it. By now I'd imagine the majority of you watching already know what recovery is, but for the sake of laying down the foundation, what is recovery exactly? Recovery denotes any attempt to return back to the stage after being launched or falling off. As mentioned earlier, what makes Smash Bros. So exciting and equally frustrating is that a character's endurance is not measured in the form of a constant. You're not guaranteed to withstand X amount of damage. So long as you make it back to stage, you can live to fight indefinitely. Obviously, when your percentage gets too high, then even a weak attack is enough to close out your stock. But in concept, so long as you don't touch the blast zone, you're still good to go. By that definition, recovery is an integral element in a fighter's defensive capabilities. If they have a strong recovery, they can survive a lot longer than someone with a poor one. To understand that, however, we have to go through the game state that taxes your ability to recover, also known as disadvantage. In every PvP game, all interactions can be categorized into one of two scenarios, neutral and advantage or disadvantage. A neutral state occurs when neither player has a situational advantage over the other. Both have access to their full range of options to press for an advantage. An advantage or disadvantage state occurs when one player has access to more or less options than the other. In the context of Smash, when struck by an attack, you're usually thrown airborne, during which you cannot use any of your grounded normals like jab, forward tilt, up smash, what have you, nor can you use your shield. This means you have only your aerials, specials, jump, and air dodge, while your opponent can do anything and everything they want until you return back to neutral. This is even more pronounced when you're off stage, as you not only have to deal with having less options, but a good portion of those options has to be utilized to get back to stage or at least the ledge, typically meaning you can't use them to fight back. The simplest way people gauge a fighter's recovery is through their up special or up B. Barring a few exceptions, up B moves usually cause the user to travel a certain distance, allowing them to extend their movement range in order to return to stage, among other usage. More things are used to determine your recovery as well though. One that isn't given nearly enough credit is a character's air physics. Even though Jigglypuff and Kirby possess multiple jumps, the former's air mobility is a lot better, making her multi-jumps more effective as a recovery option than the latter, even though Kirby's recovery is very solid in his own right. Going even further on that, Jigglypuff's air dodge is one of the best in the game, enough to where most would consider it a 7th jump. I would even say that, contrary to popular belief, air physics contribute more to one's recovery than their up B. Though of course, up Bs are the cornerstone of every cast member's recovery and plays a significant role in determining their endurance. Little Mac's Rising Uppercut is notorious for being arguably the worst recovery move in the entire Smash Bros. Franchise, as its aerial variant has non-existent horizontal movement and subpar air movement, as well as poor magnet hands, a term used to describe a character's ability to grab the ledge after using their up B. For example, an up B like Ganondorf's Dark Dive has deceptively good vertical distance on account of him extending his arm upwards and outwards. Some characters may have more than just up B to return to stage. Zero-Suit Samus can use her down special flip kick to travel both horizontally and vertically, while her Zair grabs the ledge from a reasonable distance. With the return of directional air dodges in Ultimate, that provides a universally reliable and safe form of short-range travel, with varying benefits depending on who you play. Despite the video's title suggesting is recovery overrated, it's an objective fact that recovery matters a lot in Smash. Given the very real possibility of losing an early stock due to not making it back to stage, it pays to have a good recovery. In a good number of matchups, the entire win condition for one side often boils down to getting the opponent off stage to exploit their bad recovery. Smash Ultimate in particular has a big emphasis on edge guarding and ledge trapping. Therefore, being able to capitalize on their vulnerability when returning to ledge or getting off ledge can save you a lot of effort in closing out stocks than trying to score a kill the old-fashioned way. Adding on to that, a strong recovery also increases your offensive capabilities in that you can go further off stage to edge guard than a character with a bad one. For example, while they have amazing effective range, sword fighters like Pyra, Ike, and Cloud Without Limit are better off banking on ledge traps than going for an edge guard, since their poor recovery not only prevents them from going deep, but also runs the risk of getting reversed on and losing the stock themselves. Conversely, someone like Jigglypuff and Rob have excellent edge guarding thanks to their aerial faculty in the form of multi-jumps and rocket booster respectively. In Jigglypuff's case, that's her main way of finding stocks outside of rest, as on stage pressure isn't really her forte. However, distance coverage is only half the battle. Recovery options and mix-ups are essential to have, especially in higher levels of play. In a vacuum, someone with a famously bad recovery like Chrom actually isn't that bad. His soaring slash is awful in regards to horizontal reach, but its verticality is decent, and his good air mobility covers a lot of space with air dodge and double jump, so he can make it back quite easily. The difficulty is making it back while facing resistance, and that's why Chrom's recovery is cited as one of the worst. He doesn't have a whole lot of ways to get back to stage, almost requiring him to get back in the same handful of avenues every time. This can be exploited by an opponent who has the means to punish that kind of approach. Anyone with a counter can invalidate soaring slash effortlessly, or a horizontal gimping move like Ridley's Plasma Breath hilariously screws over Chrom. Having multiple options to get back to stage mitigates your disadvantage state, thus indirectly improving your survival as it lowers the risk of you dying at like 40% to a gimp or edge guard. Alternatively, possessing a recovery move that's extremely difficult to two-frame adds more credibility to one's survival. Might as well bring his daughter on board. What makes Lucina's Dolphin Slash way better than her father's Soaring Slash, even though her horizontal reach doesn't look that much better, is not only because of a frame 5 startup, but how fast she snaps the ledge on top of a hitbox that travels through the edge of the stage, adding on a layer of safety from being two-framed. Even if you manage to time a counter, most if not all counterattacks have a frame 4 startup before the first hitbox even comes out, at which point Lucina will have already snapped the ledge. I may be mistaken, but Dolphin Slash is one of the most difficult upbeats to edge guard from on stage. Bottom line is, recovery matters a lot. For some characters it makes or breaks them. Most top tiers have at least a decent recovery. They have to in order to be viable. On the opposite end of the spectrum, many low and bottom tiers have abysmal recoveries. The 3 worst characters in the game according to most people are Dr. Mario, Ganondorf, and Little Mac. What do they all have in common? Bad recovery, either because of poor distance or how easy it is to exploit. In competitive, having a good recovery widens your margin for error, meaning on average you'll live longer since your opponent has to kill you the old-fashioned way. Fighters like Pikachu, Pac-Man, Steve, Rob, Game & Watch, and so on wouldn't be nearly as good if they didn't have a 99% chance of returning back to stage by their own devices. The inverse is also true. A sizable number of cast members are held back in viability solely because of their bad recovery. No one epitomizes this more than Chrom. I will die on this hill. If Chrom had any other up special, even Roy's Blazer would do, he would be the best character in the game. The only thing holding him back is how abhorrent his recovery is. Another one's Ridley. He doesn't have the worst recovery in the game, but if Wing Blitz could be angled in any direction, he would be way stronger. That being said, there's a lot more to the equation than just getting back onto stage, and this is when I finally talk about why I believe at times the player base cares too much about a character's recovery than they really should. Remember that recovery is only applicable in disadvantage, more specifically when you're thrown off stage. For that to happen, you have to be at a decently high percentage and usually have to lose multiple neutral interactions beforehand. Granted, throughout the course of a match you're bound to be thrown off stage, that's how Smash Bros is. Even the best players in the world are sent into disadvantage enough times to where their ability to recover will be tested. But there's an entire variable that needs to be considered before you even address that: how difficult it is to send you off stage, or in other words, your on-stage pressure. Smash might be the only PvP game I know where the best offense is a strong defense, and not the other way around. In first-person shooter games, taking the first shot is always optimal. There's virtually no situation where you don't want to attack first. In turn-based RPGs like Pokemon, you almost always want to go first, unless you're doing some kind of cheese involving counter or mirror code or something. In card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, going first is also a major advantage. In Smash, however, it's usually better to go second so that you can counter whatever your opponent tries to do. When acting first, whether attacking, jumping, rolling, grabbing, or shielding, you expose yourself to some degree. And if your opponent is prepared for any of those options, they can punish that. That's how most neutral interactions take place. One player made a reckless attack that was capitalized on by the other. Where recovery is involved in all of this is that it's essentially a non-factor while on stage. If you don't expose yourself too much on stage, you minimize the amount of times you get thrown off stage, therefore minimizing the amount of chances your bad recovery can be taken advantage of. No one showcases this better than the Aegis, Pyra, and Mithra. It's a known fact that out of all the top tiers, these two have collectively the worst recovery. Mithra's ray of punishment can only snap the ledge during the initial swing upwards. It has middling verticality and a very long animation, thus being easy to edgeguard, while Photon Edge is extremely easy to punish with almost every down air and projectile in the game. Meanwhile, Pyra's Prominence Revolt suffers from a lot of the same issues as Chrome's Soaring Slash, where she involuntarily crashes downwards if she fails to snap the ledge, she can't grab it from behind, and it doesn't travel very far horizontally. By all accounts, it may just be one of the worst recoveries period, but that's assuming you're able to consistently challenge them on stage, and good luck with that. Mithra's overwhelming speed and frame data makes it almost impossible to score a clean hit on her, and comboing her is not reliable as she can use Foresight to bail herself out. Pyra's aerials aren't that safe, but have so much range that when spaced well, she can't even be punished out of shield anyway. Terry, Cloud, Fox, Wolf, Shulk to an extent, Min, even Chrom are very strong characters despite having average or subpar recoveries due to their onstage dominance. If played well, they exert more pressure on stage than most of the cast, so the likelihood of losing a stock through being edge guarded or ledge trapped is not as great, and is serviceable enough to where you can reasonably expect them to make it back more often than not. There tends to be a balance when it comes to recovery. If a character has bad recovery, it's normally compensated in some other area, like more range, zone control, or better aggression. In general though, every character besides Little Mac has enough recovery for it to not be an instant loss if they get thrown off stage. Another point to mention is that in most circumstances, low % kills via gimping or edgeguarding has very little to do with bad recovery, and more to do with the previous bad option. A couple weeks ago, we had Smash Ultimate Summit 5, and I remember in Spargo and Proto Banham's quarterfinal match, they went to Game 5. On their last stock, Spargo was winning neutral after neutral, but when Proto found his opening, he struck Spargo with Ram Ram in the air, prompting him to double jump out of hit stun, leading to him getting hit by another shot from Ram Ram, and that led to him buffering a directional air dodge out of hit stun towards Proto, upon which Proto knocked him off stage and punted him again with a double arm, finishing his last stock off a single neutral interaction. Would Spargo have survived if Cloud had a better recovery or activated limit? Absolutely, but that wasn't why he died. He lost that entire interaction from onstage. It was a series of preventable mistakes and disadvantage that resulted in losing that stock, not bad recovery. In theory, having a bad recovery is detrimental to a character's viability, but in practice, most of the time, if you're dying to a gimp or edgeguard, those situations could have been prevented long before, at least if we're talking about high tiers. If he's Ganondorf, then by all means we can blame how bad he is. Any fighter who is mid-tier or higher has enough wherewithal to find success while on stage, and enough options to avoid consistently being screwed over off stage. A strong recovery is a luxury, not a necessity. If you're playing someone who gets edge-guarded easily, there's a good chance they have something else in their kit that when mastered, lowers the significance of their recovery, or lack thereof. Besides, I think most players would agree when I say it's more preferable to have a stronger on-stage game than an off-stage one. Not to imply that we don't want a good off-stage game. Ideally, you want the best of both worlds, but roughly 75% of all interactions that lead to a win or loss take place on-stage or ledge trapping, which is technically on-stage. Only about a quarter of all interactions happen off-stage. From personal experience, as well as watching countless VODs over the past 2 years, players prioritize ledge trapping more than edge guarding. It's inherently less risky to yourself. If you fail an edge guard, you forfeit stage control since you have to recover back to ledge yourself. So from a pragmatic standpoint, it's better to punish their get up option, where even if you miss, you're not in a bad position, you don't have to commit as much. These days, not many players go off stage to begin with, not unless it's blatantly obvious that you can win from it, it's just too risky. In short, recovery is necessary, but past a certain point, it's an added bonus to a character. The majority of the roster has enough recovery to where it's not a sore spot in their gameplay. It would be nice if it was better, but odds are that's not what's holding them back. There are many high and top tier characters with worse recoveries than low and mid tiers, but they're better everywhere else. That's the important part. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter at Vars, joining my Discord server, and if you'd like to support my work further, check out my Patreon, which offers benefits for all 3 of my channels, Vars, Vars 2, and Vars 3. Till next time though, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.